Well, welcome to ULT San Diego for the Aquarian Almanac Dialogues. Before we get started, I would like to do a reading from the voice. Help nature and work on with her, and nature will regard thee as one of her creators and make obeisance. And she will open wide before thee the portals of her secret chambers, lay bare before thy gaze the treasures hidden in the very depths of her pure virgin bosom. Unsullied by the hand of matter, she shows her treasures only to the eye of spirit, the eye which never closes, the eye for which there is no veil in all her kingdoms. Then she will show thee the means and way, the first gate and the second, the third, up to the very seventh, and then the goal, beyond which lie bathed in the sunlight of the spirit glories untold, unseen by any save the eye of soul. And now we will have a voice reading by our dear friend Shobha. Shobha Sharma.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank
That
you.
reading from the voice was beautiful.
Thank you.
It leads me to what I'm going to be talking about today, reading from something again. Today, since we're celebrating Earth Day and talking about the earth, this whole thing about working with nature is so critical. When we think of the earth and we respect it, we do all the things we need to do with our higher sevenfold nature, the higher triad. However, most of the time, what we see is that we destroy the earth physically, astrally, and also hurt it with our passions and desires. So we see this. There are forces that are trying to do the right thing, trying to do something aligned with the higher, but at the same time, we see this destruction and disappearance of this beautiful blue marble that the astronauts saw from outer space. The reading today came out just by chance. Yesterday, in our Friday Gita meetings, we are almost at the end of chapter 18, and a particular verse caught my eye. I will just read it. There dwelleth in the heart of every creature, O Arjuna, the master, Ishvara, who by his magic power causeth all things and creatures to revolve mounted upon the universal wheel of time. That phrase, universal wheel of time, made me think about something immediately. An article that I had read in the Telltale Picture gallery called The Skin of the Earth. Before I get to certain passages from this article, let me read what H.P. Blavatsky says, which is right at the beginning. And this is from The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 167. She says, lead the life necessary for the acquisition of such knowledge and powers, and wisdom will come to you naturally. The reason she's talking about knowledge and powers is this whole book is occult stories. So wisdom will come to you naturally. Whenever you are able to attune your consciousness to any of the 7 codes of universal consciousness, those codes that run along the sounding board of cosmos, vibrating from one eternity to another, when you have studied thoroughly the music of the spheres, then only will you become quite free to share your knowledge with those with whom it is safe to do so. Meanwhile, be prudent. Do not give out the great truths that are the inheritance of the future races to our present generation. Do not attempt to unveil the secret of being and non being to those unable to see the hidden meaning of Apollo's heptachord, the lyre of the radiant God, in each of the seven strings of which dwelleth the spirit, soul, and astral body of the cosmos, whose shell only has now fallen into the hands of modern science. Be prudent, we say, prudent and wise, and above all, take care what those who learn from you believe in, lest by deceiving themselves they deceive others. For such is the fate of every truth with which men are as yet unfamiliar. Then, in the introduction, I just want to read one paragraph. For earnest thinkers and painstaking penmen, the field of the occult is open. They need to equip themselves with accurate knowledge of both the principles and the details of psychic science. The master occultist of the 19th century, H.P. Blavatsky, sparingly used the story as a means of popularizing and conveying some of the profound truths of occultism. We reprint a number of her stories as well as some by her colleague, William Conjudge. For in the form of their fiction will be found entertainment for those who wish to be merely amused, but for the discerning, many hints and much illumination, together with grave warnings against dabbling in the occult. So we come to the story written by William Conjudge called The Skin of the Earth. He talks about the cold materialism of the 19th century, and he says, this age is so full of ignorance that it sees not and cares nothing for the groans that are rolling among the caverns of Mother Earth, fathoms deep below its surface. Nor will it care until its contempt for what it calls superstition shall have caused its ruin. And then another age will have risen and other men have come. It's written in the first person, so let's assume it's William Conjudge. And he talks about the fact that he had gone to this picture gallery and 7 months had passed. And he had tried to see the face of a dear friend blacken and disappear. So he wanted to go back there, and there he is waiting for the messenger to come and guide him. So as he looked at the picture gallery, he sees clouds seem to roll across the floor. This he had never seen before. And so he turns and looks at the messenger who says, do you not know this picture? No, all is dark to me. He says, it is the sign that you are to come to the earth's hall beyond the gallery. Look again at the rolling ball upon the clouds. And as he gazes at it, he realizes it is a globe which is moving with myriads of small creatures. And so he goes through a wall, reminds me of Harry Potter going to his Hogwarts school. So then he says, the messenger says, such is the skin of the earth to those who live below it. And then, then he's looking at it and he says, as I gazed the surface of the revolving mass, it was seen to be covered with circling hosts of small creatures, causing the revolutions. And then he describes them. These little beings, whatever their shapes, they seemed evanescent, translucent, and easily dissipated. In their real essence, the creatures were centers of energy. Some were more swift and harmonious in their movements. And what did they do? Each system existed for the service of all the rest. Each complemented and sustained the others as they swept onward in a harmony that was labor and love. However, suddenly, looking, he realizes I saw that an antagonistic influence was at work in the place. The orbit of many of these docile and beautiful creatures included a passage to and fro through the mystic wall. But the malign influence often prevented this. It seemed like a dark mist full of noxious vapor that deadened while it chilled. The mist was beaten back by greater efforts that jarred the harmony. And then he notices something strange. He says, he sees these creatures and he also sees the earth cities. But he asks, why do the earth cities look like dreams? And so the messenger answers, when you're being shown the eternal beings, the men of your earth and their cities appear as clouds because it is not to them that your mind is directed. Look yet again. I saw that the evil mist had gathered strength in one part of the place and had destroyed the harmony and swiftness of so many of the little beings. And the great circling globe was moving off its axis. Horrified at such impending calamities, I sought for an answer and looked towards my guide. As I did so, he disappeared, and upon the wall, his voice seemed to paint itself in living letters that themselves gave out a sound. It is the thoughts of men. I hid my face, appalled at owning such a heritage. And when I looked again, great jets spurted through the skin of the earth, thoughts sprouting and pouring out in miasmatic streams. I would have asked much more, but again, from some vast distance came the tones of the deep bronze bell. A shower of earth's blossoms fell about me. I had passed the wall. My guide was gone, and I was alone in my room, reflecting on what I had seen. Thank you.
My water. Oh, thank you. Well, that was wonderful, Shobha, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity and the honor to be here to speak today for our Earth Day, April, and here at the Theosophy Lodge. And thanks for the team, everybody. Monica, it was great to have you show the future Saturdays for the Aquarian series and all the tech people that are involved. Very grateful for all that. So today, as was mentioned, the topic is the Earth. And let me get my share screen happening here. And I'm going to be sharing and unsharing during our talk today. Okay, so so today is April 18th, and the official Earth Day is April 22nd. So we're in that Earth Day season, just like the recent new moon here. And I'm very excited to be here and talk about this. I'll focus somewhat on Helen Valborg article. But first, I wanted to just say, okay, where are we? We're somewhere on this little school globe you guys may remember, and then there's different symbols. So the circle with the plus sign in it is from astronomy and astrology both. They use that same symbol, and then the four elements of the 4 elements, as opposed to the 5 Greek elements that have quintessence, is symbolized in alchemy by these triangles with the lines in them, or no triangle at all, up triangle for fire. Earth is a downward triangle with a little bar across it, in terms of the symbology. In terms of like, where are we? So I showed you the little globe. Here's a little corner of the Earth from a photograph from the year 1944 during World War II, when the two warring sides in World War II were experimenting with V-2 rockets to send rockets across the ocean. Certainly, London got pummeled by German rockets and whatnot. And so this is a V-2 rocket, a picture of the Earth in 1944. And it was launched in October from New Mexico in the United States. By this point, Wernher von Braun, one of the rocket scientists, had come from Germany to the US. And it was a suborbital flight, so it wasn't actually in orbit yet. And let me stop sharing here a moment. Where's my mouse? Sometimes the little mouse arrow will submarine, which means I don't see it. And that's happening right now. Let me see if I can get my mouse to come back. There it is. Okay, so now it's stop shared. And is the camera on? Yeah. Okay. I don't see me though. Yeah. Oh, I see. No, I forgot to stop share. There we go. All right. So now I see myself on the Zoom. So I mentioned the article by Helen Balborg called The Earth. It starts with a quote, and I want to read one of the Indian stories from the American Indians. So the Milton poetry from, this is on Theosophy Trust, a simple article called The Earth. The Milton quote is as follows. What if Earth be but a shadow of heaven and things therein, each to other like, more than on earth is thought? Question from John Milton. And then we plunge into Helen Valborg is the anonymous author who wrote these, so we know her name, but she doesn't give credit on those things. The erudition, the training and the study and the things that she offers us in these articles is actually immense. So I'll just talk a little bit about this article, which is huge, even though it's not all that long, but it's really jam-packed with all kinds of stuff. So I'll read one of the various anthropological stories. She references different Indian groups and historical groups around the planet. This is from the United States area, which is now the United States. Quote, in the beginning of the world, man beings dwelt on the far side of the visible sky. This heaven, which exists in eternity, is the prototype of the world, and its lodges are like those of the Onondaga here on earth, the Onondaga Indian tribe. In this deathless land, a celestial girl child was born. Instructed by her parents, the ancient-bodied one, she endured many trials while journeying to the lodge of the chief, whose name is he who holds the earth, whom she was to marry. Pleased with the manner in which she had passed all the tests he put her to, this heavenly chief sent her with gifts to be distributed among her own celestial kindred. So we're still up in the heavens. Upon her return, he observed that she was with child, and disbelieving her assertion of fidelity, he prepared to sever the axis tree of the universe, even as she gave birth to a daughter named Gusts of Wind. With the severing of the world tree, the mother's child drew back into her womb, and they were both cast down into the abyss. Thus did the Anstaic, who was to become Great Mother Earth, bear within her the heavenly born infant, whose name means breath of life. So the daughter has got two names. Breath of life is the current name. They fell for long ages steadily through the darkness until she began to perceive a blue light of endless water stretching below. On its surface swam the water bird, Bittern, who, seeing her body falling into the depths, decided to dive down and bear up her substance in his mouth. Other animal spirits appeared and attempted to bring it up, but it was Muskrat who succeeded and who placed it upon the carapace of Turtle, which then began to grow to become the solid land. Gusts of Wind was reborn on Earth. So the dog now has a third name, Gusts of Wind. When she came to maturity, she received the nocturnal visits of Ruler of the Winds, and in time gave birth to twins. So we have another generation. Here were Yoshkeha, the demiurge and earth shaper, and Choaskara, the imitator and trickster. With their birth, the stage was set for the creative and shadowy elements of great earthly drama which was to unfold. So the author here then proceeds to talk in this article of other anthropological groups. Why am I not? That face is not on the screen. Other anthropological groups of cosmology, and says that the idea of earth and water and the abyss and falling through that and then showing up as seeing the blue thing of earth. There I am. Yeah, I was giving hand gestures so you guys could see that. And says that there's a number of people, some Asiatic ones, even in the Icelandic Edda, other American Indian groups have similar kinds of stories. And this is, I think, very fascinating. She goes on to say that it's somewhat noumenal in this idea that different anthropological groups have come up with these stories of there being a heaven and then some celestial beings and then coming down to earth being manifested. This is somewhat like the cosmogenesis in Sacred Doctrine Volume 1, where there's various Gnostic type emanations from the first fundamental principle to the logoi, and then down we have the Kumaras and these other higher beings that then were called the architects that created the earth. We get back to sharing here. So what about our earth? So here we have back to the sharing here. Okay. So we have this rocket view of the earth, and then going beyond that, Shobha mentioned the blue marble. So for us older folks, 1972 is still in our memory when the Apollo 7 astronauts sent this photograph back to Earth. And it's been widely distributed. Some of the people on the internet said it's the most widely distributed astronaut picture of the Earth up until just lately from 1972. So that's the blue marble. And we love that. We love the Earth. And I think what Shobha read is very, very instructive about our relationship to the Earth. The modern astronauts earlier this month of April in the year 2026 in a spaceship called Artemis 2 went from the Earth to the moon. They didn't land on the moon, but they went up there and they took pictures of the Earth from various dimensions, various perspectives. And so here you can see a little bit, it's hard to see on the screen there, a little bit of green up at 1 o'clock, and that's the Aurora Borealis up in the northern hemisphere. And then down around 7 p.m. o'clock, there's some little lights, and that's going to be the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal. The middle gray brown area we see is Africa. And it's just fascinating to have these modern pictures of Earth. And I'm very excited that, the government and NASA and everyone on the planet has decided to get back up into space. And of course, there's other private companies that are wanting to get up in space as well. And here's one of the, again, from the recent Artemis 2, a photograph of the moon of the Earth rising over the moon's surface. So Earthrise, as opposed to sunrise or moonrise, we have Earthrise. It's kind of funny language, but really sort of delightful to see from that perspective. And someone suggested that perhaps future generations of humans here on Earth can have sort of an initiation experience for teenage girls and boys and teenage people to go into orbit just briefly and get a perspective of the Earth and say, wow, that's where I live. That's where all these other 8 billion or however many of us are there. And so then these young adult teenagers can have that experience of really the sanctity and the fragility of Earth and the vastness of our solar system and how precious this little blue marble that we're living in with this little thin bit of atmosphere that keeps us alive with something to breathe. Helen Valborg talked about, the ocean, and later on in her article talks about inundations and land being formed and land being washed over with floods and things like that. So there's a cuneiform story from Mesopotamia called the Cradle of Civilization, but the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. I believe it's now the modern country of Iraq. And so the Epic of Gilgamesh is depicted here with that little drawing statue of Gilgamesh, and then some of the cuneiforms there. The idea of the bittern that the Iroquois Onondaga Indians had about the bird flying down and trying to find some mud and in its feet and some dirt in its mouth is very reminiscent of the Noah Ark story from the Old Testament in the Judeo-Christian tradition, from the Noah, what is that called? The Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So we got this Noah flood story. So it's reminiscent of the Epic of Gilgamesh and other stories around the planet. And so when Carl Jung hypothesizes about this idea of a kind of a collective unconscious, that we have some race memories somewhere, or some people might call it the Akashic record. So the idea of floods and dry land and birds helping to find things. And the author of the Earth article refers to birds as a creature in our archetypal awareness of creatures that can both span heaven and earth because they fly in the sky, but also can come to the earth. And like with Noah, he'll help them find land again. One fascinating thing that I was doing these last couple of days is a retreat, an in-person retreat here in San Diego County. The theme is breaking patterns. So certainly today I hope to allow us to say, we can be a little nucleus of people here in the Theosophy world, in our lodge, in our ULT, in our larger group on Zoom land, and anybody that might happen to watch us on the YouTube channel that Truth and others have set up, and say maybe we can break the pattern of being selfish and self-centered and abusing the planet, as Shobha had mentioned, and really then can love it with our thoughts and our actions, as William Quandt Judge mentions. So one article from the 1800s, 1890s, in a magazine article, a magazine journal with the rather provocative name of Lucifer, provocative to Christians at the time in Victorian England. But one translation of Lucifer is the bringer of light. So the bringer of wisdom, knowledge, information. So that's what Lucifer is about here. Not that it has anything to do with the medieval Europe idea of a Satan devil creature, but it's the bringer of light. And so here's a quote from the writings of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, whom we follow her writings quite closely here in the Theosophy world and the ULT. So I'll read this quote. Owing to the triumphant march and the invasion of civilization, nature, as well as man and ethics, is sacrificed and is fast becoming artificial. Climates are changing, and the face of the whole world will soon be altered. Under the murderous hand of the pioneers of civilization, the destruction of whole primeval forests is leading to the drying up of rivers, and the opening of the Suez Canal has changed the climate of Egypt as that of Panama. And this climate change, she says, will divert the course of the Gulf Stream, and that's a stream of ocean water in the Atlantic Ocean. So I just wanted to dissect this little couple of sentences here from this article, and I do recommend the whole article. It's called Civilization, Death of Art and Beauty. She talks a lot about elements of artistry and artisanship that were prevalent in Europe since the Italian Renaissance and even before. I mean, you can imagine the pharaonic Egyptian, pyramids and temples and all that temple art, the Greek statues, which, believe it or not, nowadays we think of the Greek statues being white, but they liked paint, and they were really polychrome. There's little bits of paint on some of the statues, like the Elgin marbles, which are up in London at the British Museum, and the Greek people want those back to Greece. But they were a lot of artistry that Blavatsky here is bemoaning. But coming back to this couple of sentences here about the invasion of civilization. So this is in the 1889, I mean, over 100 years ago. And you guys may remember here in Zoomland and in the lodge, one of these kind of like Earth Day stories from the late 1960s about ticky-tack, talking about the little suburban houses on the hills of San Francisco Peninsula. And we got all these, and then there's another song about pave paradise and put up a parking lot. I mean, there's lyrics of these songs that we know. And so here she is almost 100 years before that, predicting this stuff was be happening. And everything will be artificial. So here is an example of an artificial ocean that can house maximum 10,000 people in this fake ocean where there's machines making waves so they can feel like they're in the ocean. There's sand. It's covered with retractable roofs. And it's a resort in Japan that has since been torn down for economic reasons. It didn't flourish financially, but it lasted for about 20 years or almost 30 years, a gigantic place. And it was called the Sea Gaia Ocean Dome. So they used the Gaia word in their cutesy name. A Sheraton Resort, Sea Gaia Ocean Resort. Polynesian theme, so they had painting on the walls and pumping music and whatnot. People could go body surfing and swimming there in the chlorinated water. So it wasn't really salt water, so it wasn't quite like the ocean. And it lasted from 1993 to 2017. And like I said, it was demolished. So even in the other century, Blavatsky is predicting things will be artificial. It's like, yeah, okay, we have artificial. And there's a lot of other artificial things too. That's just one example. Also, in those couple of sentences, she predicts deforestation and climate change, which is, I think, rather prescient. And I think in the late 1800s, people in London were kind of being futurists and saying, wow, as London gets bigger, we're going to have more and more, because they were in horse and buggy days and didn't have so many cars. There were a few very, very primitive early, cars in those days, but really the automobile didn't get going till the 1900s, the next century. They're saying, "Oh my God, the streets of London are going to be 4 feet high with horse manure. We don't be careful here." And with the chimney sweeps and burning so much coal, London was pretty dark and black and sooty and dirty. So she's predicting from those realities at that time in her life that there'll be other climatic changes, which we have now seen, and we're living through them today, actually. One of the predictions is about deforestation, and here's the quote from there. "The destruction of whole primeval forests is leading to the drying up of rivers." This is from HPB's writing herself. And so back when I was in high school in the 1970s, junior high and high school, Landsat, an unmanned satellite, took pictures of the Earth and was able to see already the slash and burn agriculture in Brazil, for example, so they could grow more cattle so we could have hamburgers, which as a high school student I love, but it's like, oh, hamburgers. So in high school we talked about that, and then later on in the later 70s, astronauts were in Skylab and were able to take pictures of and report large plumes of smoke over parts of Brazil where people were doing slash and burn agriculture. Then 50 years later, from high school days till now, 2024, 2 years ago, significant forest loss has been documented in Bolivia and south central Brazil. Here's a map of from 2024 forest loss in the yellow and red on the colors there, and then fires, which are still ongoing, a very high percent of fires and big fires that are happening. So both the coral reefs, which I'm not addressing too much here, and the rainforests in the equatorial part of the Earth, from a biology perspective, are really considered to be the womb of the Earth where new species are created in our biological, Darwinian diversity. So there's a lot of stuff happening in this very precious part of our planet that keeps biological life going and renewed and new species formation. So as the rainforests are diminishing over these decades of my life and our lives, many of us, it's like, whoa, what's going to be happening? And how will the Earth balance out? And that's, I think, where we can adjust our thinking and our behaviors. It's not just Brazil, it's other parts of the equatorial world. So Thailand has lost a lot of forest since the 1960s. They've lost 60% of their forested land in the Thai and Cambodia, Laos, the rainforests over there. Severe decline in the 70s and 80s. They tried to get some regrowing back. And then along the ocean areas of Thailand, there's mangrove groves, and those have dropped by 50%. It's like pretty amazing loss. So part of our consumption and our habits of what we're doing as a human species has something to do with this. And those behaviors and habits have to do with what we're thinking about, as William Quinn Judge has talked about. The other thing to delve into just for a moment from that interesting quote about from Blavatsky herself is the Gulf Stream. So in the Atlantic Ocean, there's a really fascinating thing I've been reading about in the last several years about the Atlantic Ocean and the polar ice caps. So if anyone had an old-fashioned stereo or receiver that had big aluminum panels, big aluminum pieces of metal sticking out the back, because the electronics in these old-fashioned radios and receivers and amplifiers, as Truth will probably attest and he knows, generated a lot of heat. And so rather than keeping the electronics from burning out, you put these aluminum things to radiate the heat outward. So just like on our planet Earth here, the two poles, the ice on the north and the ice on the south, are like heat radiators, and they are melting. So during the Cold War days, atomic submarines were very carefully measuring the thickness of the Earth in the Arctic so they could maybe send rockets to Moscow in case of a war. And so they have a lot of good data, of decades of data, and really the most polar ice caps are melting. They're going away. And that's causing changes in the salinity and the temperatures of the Atlantic Ocean. And So in 1891, she's predicting the Gulf Stream will change. And indeed, here's a little picture of the red Gulf Stream. It's more surface Atlantic Ocean, but there's a deeper thing and a whole system of water movements called the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. It's like, yeah, that's hard to say. And it's based partly on saltwater gradients. But as Iceland melts and the North Polar ice cap melts, the water in the Atlantic in the north is become more diluted and less saline. So the saline gradients that cause motion of the currents is shifting. The temperatures are shifting, and the prediction is by the middle of this century or the end of this century, say 2099, the British Isles, France is going to be probably just as cold and snowy as Nova Scotia, because as you can see on the map here, they're kind of at the same distance from the equator. They're way up there in the north. They're kept nice and green in beautiful springtime in Paris because of the ocean Atlantic currents, which are changing, and the predictions are, whoa, it's going to get worse. And here's a little more details about that. As I just said, it'll change the climate of Europe. The ice caps in Greenland are melting, more saline, et cetera, et cetera. And then just like the Epic of Gilgamesh and Noah's Ark, there's predictions that the Atlantic Ocean will be up in height by 50 to 100 centimeters, or up to 1.5 to 3 feet higher than it is right now. So that has implications for Manhattan and the Netherlands and all these other places. It's like, okay, what about that? So it's kind of a dire warning. So here in Theosophy, Blavatsky tells us in The Secret Doctrine that she has a set of doctrines, the perennial wisdom from lots of different civilizations and masters that has been, in a sense, gifted to her, just the way the team here is a gift to me to help this going today. So these perennial wisdom was gifted to her, and it has a lot of elements of Hinduism and Buddhism and other esoteric traditions. One of the rather amazing ideas is that there are 7 principles to things. Human beings, us as people, things in nature, but also the planet Earth. And there's this whole idea of this Gnostic emanation from the first fundamental principle that is really nameless, that she writes about in the poem. This first fundamental principle from which everything manifests and emanates. And that then results in these 7 principles as we go down from the logoi and different layers of reality, from something that's very ethereal and spiritual. You might even say, quote, energy. So for me, as a Caltech trained modern scientist, the E of energy, and that E equals mc squared, or E is more or less mc squared, is that equation that energy and matter are interchangeable. And this is very much like the Sanskrit Purusha and Prakriti, where spirit and matter are, in a sense, interchangeable. So it could be just different languages from different perspectives. But here we have the most physical is the Sthula Sarira. That's going to be our manifested physical world. And modern, Caltech, MIT, Cambridge, England, science is just focused on the manifested physical. So just really the last of the 7 down there. Oh, she's calling it the first in this diagram here. Linga, Sharira, Prana, Kama are something that's more astral-like, something more spiritual, and the astral body really is sort of like our blueprint of our physical body. So it's kind of fascinating stuff. And this is true for the Earth as well. So then going back to Helen Valborg and the Theosophy Trust, like I said a minute ago, it's a very dense article, sort of like I like to make the analogy of a fruitcake at Christmas time. It's just chock full of stuff, and it'll take a while to digest it all. I just read a little bit of the Onondaga origin story. There's Hindu earth stories as well. The Edda also has different stories of the earth being descended from heaven, and different people have these different ideas. The cosmogonical correlation with Blavatsky and the Secret Doctrine is that there's a noumenal reality before we get to the physical reality. And that's sort of the theme of these different creation stories from different cultures and anthropologies over the years. Let me stop sharing a moment here. I can get my mouse to behave. Okay, there we go. And In your article, Helen Valborg makes a lot of correlations, and I was dreaming about making some little spreadsheets, but I didn't. So other cultures, one, for example, that is in my mind is the Greek culture, and they had various names for Earth, very much analogous to that septenary, sevenfold nature of Earth, and it's rather fascinating that other cultures would come up with that as well. And one of the cultures that Valborg writes about has the idea that the Earth arose, I think it's Polynesian or Hawaiian, that the Earth arose from the debris of a previous entity. And curiously enough, let me go back to my share screen. In our very own beloved secret doctrine here, we have not only the idea that there are noumenal ideas that then come up to our physical Earth, but that our Earth, in a sense, is a product or a shadow or the next stage of evolution from the moon. So our Earth-Moon system really is a really paired identity of two entities, one of whom is dead, and sort of like the idea of reincarnation or that fancy Victorian word of metempsychosis, where the spirit consciousness of one thing can transfer to something else. So it's sort of like a metempsychosis of the moon entity transferring itself and its life force energy to the earth and to manifest in the globe that we're currently living on. It's like, oh, okay. And so Blavatsky has a quote here. The moon is from stanza 4, sloka 4 and 5 in the Secret Doctrine. The moon is the parent of the earth. The moon is the dead giver of life to the earth. So this is very explicit that Blavatsky is writing. And in Secret Doctrine, in her early writing, she says, okay, I'm presenting all this stuff to you. You can believe it or not, it's up to you. It's not a dogma that you're forced to believe, but just try it on for size in your meditations, in your life, in your experiences, and you come up and see what you think about it all. And behind a lot of the Secret Doctrine doctrines that are presented, including this one about the Earth being the child of the moon, there's the idea that, well, you don't have to believe it, but this is what we're telling you is going on. And it does present this other level of reality that these planets that we look at in a year or so ago here in the Saturday Aquarians, we talked about the planets and astrology, and it was a really fascinating time. So these other planets, in a sense, are entities themselves. The sun itself, we talk about as an entity. So our Earth is going around the sun, and we have these other entities which are not human form like us, but yet we can believe they have an identity, a consciousness of their own, which is on a different level of, you might say, conscious perception. So here we have another quote from Secret Doctrine from Blavatsky's writing, from her own writing. The moon is now the cold residual quantity, the shadow dragged after the new body into which her living powers and principles are transfused. Misspelled, got a typo there. Metempsychosis on a planetary level. So again, it's just like that reincarnation, that coming into a new form, a new incarnation, a new life, a new personality. One word that we talk about here a lot that I've been puzzling over the last several years is coagination. And here from the dictionary definition, it's coagination is the union or combination of growing together or different parts or substances that can form a single body, a mass, or a whole. So there are different parts or different substances. And I think that's a fascinating idea, because as we talk about the first fundamental principle in the Logoi, Blavatsky uses the word substance in a very specific way. So it's not substance that we think of as, the atoms and subatomic particles, but substance is like going back to these more esoteric, abstract Purusha and Prakriti ideas, or energy and matter. It's like, what is that? But even modern science still has some weirdness about matter as waves that, like with the Schrodinger wave equation, the wave equation condenses into something that we can observe as a particle. So substance is a curious thing. And so there's different levels of substance. And then the famous diagram that we think about a lot on page 200 of the Secret Doctrine shows this first plane, second plane, third plane. So there's really more rarefied things. And am I not screen sharing it?
Yeah. Did you want to share? Thank you.
Something weird is happening. Let me see. I'm going to stop sharing and then start sharing again. I was sharing. And for some reason, oh, there it is. Okay, now, yeah, this, someone mentioned a minute ago, there's new software. So I was like, oh, new software. Okay, so here's the page 200. And let me go to a clear diagram of the same information that's a little easier to read than the like, cursive writing from the actual secret doctrine. So 1, 2, and 3 are these higher levels from the more abstract that are impossible to talk about. Then we get to the logoi and then down into the manifested world. The globes now, like our Earth globe, are depicted in these letters that are in a circle, the A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So at the present time, according to the ideas and the perennial philosophy presented by Blavatsky, we're in globe D. And in each globe, there's different rounds and then races of humans that are living in these things and having these experiences and awarenesses. The coagination is this idea that at some level of reality, and you guys can correct me when we get to discussion or not, that all the different globes, in a sense, are existing simultaneously, but they are made of different substances. So the substance of, as you go from A, B, C down to D, we're going from something that's more spiritual or etherealized, more of the E equals MC squared, more on the E side. And then we get to the M side down on of MC squared of matter on the earth, where we're in our densest, more materialized form. And then the idea of these cycles, because we're all about cycles and circles and wheels and revolutions. So there's different words and language that can apply to these ideas of an involution into matter and an evolution back to spirit. So we have these two ideas. And so our very planet that we're living on, and us as humans, we're going through this gigantic cosmic experience to gain experiences of behaviors that we do, of compassion, of selfishness, all these different experiences. And right now on the D Earth globe, we're, I think, getting a big face full of selfishness experiences with what's happening on the planet that I was talking about. That Blavatsky was predicting that if this artificial civilization stuff continues, we'll have changes on the manifested Earth plane. And so that's kind of fascinating. And then on the other side, I'll just say it, but I won't talk about it, is the Chaldean Kabbalah. So there's the tree of life depicted just in parallel with the circles, but usually you see the tree of life in a different picture traditionally in the bookstores and whatnot, or in Kabbalistic writings. So coagination. So on page 200, she talks about the chain of globes, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it gives reference to several Earths. And our D, globe D Earth, is this physical, material Earth. Other levels were not material at all. And Valborg in the article on Earth describes some of them as being kind of luminous and fiery, or a fire mist. And then the form that we had as humans, as monastic beings, was also very etherealized. And then we got into our physical form. So the various Earths had various beings, and somehow you can think of them as different levels of conscious awareness. And one example, maybe from physical science, is looking at small things you can see with your eyes, things you can see with a magnifying glass, tiny things you can see with a microscope, and then even smaller things you can see with an electron microscope. Then a couple of years ago, here in one of the Saturday Aquarian talks, someone had a picture of a hydrogen atom with some newfangled, even more elite, tiny machine that could look at hydrogen atoms and come up with a picture of that. So I think that's an analogy, you might say, for this idea that the ABCD globes are experienced at different levels of conscious awareness. And so in our day-to-day life, we're really mostly hanging out here on the D globe level. And some of these other Earth were like in A and B of the globes, the Chaya, sort of shadow-like, the fire mist I mentioned, with luminous beings, humans and animals. Then we got more materialized, and then the fourth round is where we are now in the densest physical form. And as we progress, we'll become less dense. So here's another definition. Coadjunction refers to the union or the close interrelation of the 7 globes comprising the planetary chain. And these globes are in coadjunction, but not consubstantiality. So they're not made of the same stuff or substance, to use that theosophical word the way Blavatsky uses it, not made of the same substance. And so they're not at the same level of conscious awareness, you might say, or consciousness. They're not in the consubstantiality with our physical Earth, meaning that they form a unitary system, though they exist on different planes of matter and consciousness. A fascinating idea. So in short, here's a quote from Blavatsky. As globes, they are in coadjunction, but not in consubstantiality with our Earth, and thus pertain to quite another state of consciousness. That's from Secret Doctrine, Volume 1 on page 166. And then another comment is that the higher globes are on different planes, yet they form a unitary system. And nevertheless, she says, these must not be taken as implying that they occupy the same space. So we have all these theosophical concepts of space and duration, and really something to wrap our abstract thinking about. So here's a quote from her in a letter to Sinnett on page 250, or maybe letter number 250, I'm not sure. I think it's letter 250. Of course, if there was anything in those worlds approaching to the constitution of our globe, it would be an utter fallacy, an absurdity to say that they are within our world and within each other as they are, and that yet they do not intermingle together. So that's again going with the idea of the no consubstantiality. Now let me check the time here. A few more quick words on geology. Just to say, in Valborg's dense and immense article, she mentioned something about physical theories of Earth formation, from nebula of gas forming the sun and then the 9 planets, and that's one theory. There's some other theories. Weird one I had not heard of from physical scientists from the 1800s. They were each planet was actually a dyad of 2 planets going in opposite directions, and then another star came by and grabbed all the ones going in the other direction. It's like, that's a weird theory. I hadn't heard of that one. And then in terms of the geology, we had the early mud, and it formed shale, and then the shale got compressed as it got deeper in the ground to form schist, and then the clays recrystallized, calling schist. And then Valborg writes about going to the Grand Canyon to see these different layers of the physical Earth, and they're very beautiful. And what was surprising to me, I've been to the Grand Canyon only once, didn't really study it that well, but the different deeper layers have fascinating names from different Hindu gods and other deities. It's like, oh, really? So there's Vishnu schist, which is the oldest layer of this crystallized clay-like stuff, 1.7 billion years old. It's from metamorphic rock. And here's a cute little drawing cartoon of the Vishnu schist at the bottom. That's hard for me to say. Vishnu schist, which is that crystallized clay, very ancient, almost 2 billion years old, bright angel, shale, the Zoroaster granite, Redwall limestone, and then you go on upward to younger and younger bits of earth and dirt that were deposited. So here we're back to the blue marble that Shobha mentioned at the beginning, and just to kind of wrap up with the article that Shobha gracefully read to us about the messenger appearing and giving the author, William Craig Judge, visions of the elementals, and then asking the really pointed question at the end: what influences these elementals that are so important for life, biological life, planetary life? You know, the rainforests and the coral reefs, us as humans, the circling of the planet, all the elementals have all these jobs and these things to do. And the answer from this mysterious messenger is a very simple 1-sentence answer that Shobha read to us. The influence is the thoughts of men. So this is powerful. And I think within it is contained a lot of hope and positive ideas. So one of the objects in the TS is to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction to race, sex, creed, caste, or color. And through the thoughts of men can be really strengthened by our thoughts and our little nuclear groups of theosophical lodges and other people like my weekend folks up in Ramona who are talking about breaking the patterns. the folks at that business retreat are very much spiritualistic kind of people in their own odd entrepreneurial way. And they do believe in unseen forces. So it's not only Theosophists. We're like a really important group, I think, historically from the 1880s, 1900s, now in the 2000s, to really keep these ideas strong and really, as one of our friends and members talks about, the perennial philosophy. If theosophy is sort of a scary word, we can call it that too. And that by our thoughts, our behaviors, our mindset, our love of the earth, our stewardship of the planet, we can help to keep those elementals happy and healthy and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and maybe keep the Gulf Stream flowing the way it's going, so Ireland doesn't become all snowy and icy and stays green, like in the St. Patrick's Day songs. So next Saturday is Earth Day celebration here in San Diego. A little call out for that. I'll be going there in the afternoon if any of the local people want to join me. I'll probably get there around 12 or 11:30 or 12. It's going to be in Balboa Park, and the official Earth Day started in the year 1970, and we're celebrating it today on the 18th, and then again next Saturday on the 25th will be a celebration here in San Diego. So with that, let me stop sharing and open us up for a little Q&A. And is someone in particular going to host the questions?
And
Yeah.
I'll tell.
Okay, yeah. So we'll just do questions. Marian, let's go with you first, and then Judy second.
Thank you. That was a really beautiful, inspiring talk you gave. You mentioned the Artemis 2 mission a couple of times, and Shobha did. And I was wondering, in the question and answer period after the astronauts returned, they had one to the press. The press was able to ask questions. And the overwhelming information that was gleaned from their trip, of course they were transmitting all this kind of science data that was part of their assignment, was to geological information.
Yes.
But like the one scientist, Christina Koch, said, what they all asked them, what was the most significant experience that you can recall? And they said all of us were in tears, and we all had to stop our scientific work because we realized that in looking at the planet Earth, all of us are just helpless specks. We're out here in the middle with all of this darkness around us, but if we all work as one, we are strong. If we all work together, we are one. And that was the most, I guess, enlightening kind of information or realization. And it just is interesting how there really is kind of a shift in consciousness when people go to outer space. You know, you hear these similar stories. It becomes a religious, spiritual event for them, which is very inspiring. Anyway, that's my comment.
Well, thank you very much. And what do you think about the idea of teenagers going up as a initiation to adulthood?
I think I know I heard you say that. I think it's a wonderful idea. And also, the astronauts did relay a lot of feeling of inspiration to younger people to study hard. They said there's a tremendous amount you have to do to get to what we're doing, but you have to begin, and by serious work, by dedication, and even if you're not going to be an astronaut, be the best you can. That's what they kept saying. Be the best teacher, be the best nurse, be whatever you want to be the very best, and serve humanity.
Thank you for that, and that very much echoes with the Gita and Krishna's advice to Arjuna to do your duty, be the best in your Svadharma, your particular incarnation. Let's go to Judy, and then after that, Kirk. So, Judy, what do you have to offer or ask today?
Yes, thank you for a very brilliant and thorough presentation on our Earth and what is so really complex about it and wonderful about. You spoke a lot about the very kind of selfish quote engineering marvels that we've had, like the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, that have altered climate, and deforestation and other things that we could do so fast with modern technology. But you didn't speak about dams. There is a book called Dams and Other Disasters about the Army Corps of Engineers. Like, I once saw the Hoover Dam, and the Boulder Dam now, and the creation of Las Vegas, Sin City. And of course, a lot of people live in Nevada and never bother with such things. But, I think it's just a disaster to create Lake Mead and then deprive the Colorado River of that water and everyone below it of that water. And we're seeing the effects now, and they're probably going to get worse. And Las Vegas isn't going to get any better. There may be more sports teams there. But
yes, indeed.
When is this kind of selfishness going to stop? I mean, it's probably going to be a lot of suffering before it does, and we have better leaders that are going to be conscious of the kind of issues you have discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Judy. And I think my hopefulness at the end is like candlelight in the darkness, that our lodges and our groups and different organizations around the planet of people that are concerned about sustainability and the earth and the Earth Day people who may not even have heard of Blavatsky or Theosophy, they can be part of that shift of human thought and human consciousness. And just like the little character in the movie Slumdog Millionaire, I had an experience in undergraduate school of one anthropology teacher who focused on the Gwembitanga in the Zambezi River Valley. And around 1950, somebody wanted to make electricity for purifying copper from copper mines and built a gigantic dam. The other one in Africa is the Aswan Dam, which buried a lot of Egyptian burial and temples and things like that. So those are lost to archaeology. They're now underwater in the Aswan Dam lake. And then the Kariba River Valley moved these group of people that were living as hunter-gatherers, like 40,000 year ago humans, into Kinshasa, into other cities in Nairobi and Zimbabwe. So that's fascinating, the dams. And yes, it has been a problem. And I'm not sure the answer to the question other than just keep our candles burning and our thoughts get emanate out, and then maybe some political action as well. Kurt, what do you have to share with us today, this afternoon?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Really enjoyed both the reading from Shobha, highlighting that beautiful, remarkable article by Judge, and then also your comments, both from the scientific perspective and the great mystery of the 7 globes of the Earth chain and so on, and all your investigation into coordination and what that means. So really appreciated such depth that you brought to it. I just wanted to add one additional comment, because often, the problems that we see seem so overwhelming, and that that what the individual can do seems so minute. And you brought forth the idea that, of course, what we're doing with our thoughts is fundamental. And we have that saying from the Christian tradition that, it's not what goes into your mouth, it's what comes out of it. That's a problem. So the misuse of speech being also this tremendous pollution and this kind of dragging down of consciousness through the use of speech, But what I wanted to add to the discussion is probably, in fact, most of the time when I bring it up, it's very unpopular. But there was a study done about 15 years ago by the UN, by over 500 scientists around the world. They came up with this 100-page document as a result of it. And then there was more recent studies by researchers like George Monbiot. And if you Google his name, you'll find he has several TED Talks and interviews where he kind of crystallizes this issue, which is that the number one cause of habitat loss, species extinction, deforestation, and soil degradation, of water overuse and scarcity, as well as greenhouse gas emission, is livestock farming. It's the way we feed ourselves on this planet. Mm-hmm. And that And you mentioned, the issue of forests being burned for hamburgers, but that's
yes,
it's literally the case, right? That what they're doing is creating farmland for soy or other products, or for grazing for cattle, and that soy is to feed the cattle, right? So it's this earth intensive, water intensive, resource intensive uh, development of food sources that having to do with chickens and ducks and cattle, that which also require these enormous inputs of fertilizers, biological, or rather pharmaceuticals to keep the diseases down and so on. That then results, all of that washing into the rivers and oceans, creating these blooms in which nothing can live or grow.
Yes.
And all of that. So it's just what it comes down to for me is diet. That every time we go to the grocery store, we are registering our concern for the planet or lack of it. So there's a lot of discussion about vegetarianism, veganism, and it's is it really necessary for our spiritual life? Well, no, it's not. It's not what goes into your mouth; it's what comes out of it. But from an ecological standpoint, if I'm convinced, if HPV was alive today, she would say, "This is what is destroying the planet: is livestock farming. These huge farms in which animals are horribly mistreated, morally reprehensible ways that animals are treated, and then just they're like products, right, on the assembly lines." And so there's that whole moral element as well, but it's also it creates, according to the research, more greenhouse gases than all forms of transportation combined. Trucks, airplanes, cars combined. It's more intensive in its creation of greenhouse gases. So anyway, it's something the individual can do. Individual choices, weekly, on a daily basis. What we're putting into our mouths, what we're buying at the grocery store, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Yes, Kirk, thank you for mentioning that. That is another dimension of this, like a Christmas fruitcake story and discussion about the Earth. And that is very true. I really believe that. And one thing that, again, with Artemis and trips to the moon, I've been thinking about NASA. In the last 2 years, I've become aware of some research that NASA is doing on a plant-based protein source for astronauts. Either on space station or going on a trip to the moon or to Mars. And believe it or not, it's something that's very popular in Cambodia and Thailand in Southeast Asia. And that is a plant called duckweed, which in the United States is treated as a pest and is usually killed with pesticides or try to get rid of the duckweed. But duckweed is fascinating. For us as humans, in my biological training, there's this thing called essential amino acids. There's 9 of them, and duckweed has all 9. And there's a symbiotic, like epiphytes, things that live together. There's a bacteria that lives in the duckweed that creates vitamin B12. So everybody says, you can only get vitamin B12 as a vegetarian or vegan with a shot every 5 years, or you got to eat some red meat or something to get your B12. But duckweed, as these NASA scientists are exploring a particular species of it, contains the 9 essential amino acids and B12. So you got yourself kind of handled there, and you get some fiber because it's a plant. So astronauts can live on that stuff. And I just had a friend of mine build a hoop house greenhouse in my backyard, so it's going to be protected from the mosquitoes. I'm intending to grow some duckweed and see what it tastes like. But apparently Cambodian people have been eating that stuff and Thai people for centuries.
This is the other thing that Monbiot talks about, is this production of green resources like that are high protein, high nutritional value, can be produced at very low cost and very little impact. And he's convinced that is the next kind of cycle we're going to go through in terms of the food that we eat. But thank you for those comments again, Ken. Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we have Maluka with a hand raised. Maluka, what do you have to share with us this afternoon?
Hi, everybody, and happy springtime and Earth. I'm going to be going to San Diego, but it's for the Mother's Day celebration of the Shumash. I don't know if you are aware of it.
Oh, Mother's Day. Okay.
Yeah, I will send you the information. I would like to say that it was very wonderful from the beginning to the end, and all the comments are beautiful as well. So congratulations to all. Keep up the great work. And it was mentioned that the astronaut went to the moon, right? And
Yes.
or travel around the moon, the dark side. HPB always say that the dark side of the moon is very sacred. And then she talks about that a Rajasic star is being hidden in between the sun and the moon. But I was saying, oh, they didn't see it. They did. I was saying, will they see something? Well, they didn't, of course, because they don't have the eyes to see it. You have to be more advanced to see this type of thing, as HPB pointed out. You mentioned England, and HPB talks about that the last kings on earth is going to be the British. It will be the last.
I didn't know that.
She also say that they're going to start submerging. The islands of the British Islands going to start submerging. And guess what? I did some study years ago, and there are already some islands that have submerged quite a bit. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, so a lot of things that you say brought memories of all these things that I researched before. So talking about water, we as humanity, we have to get in deep waters to learn how to swim. It seems like it's our nature, that that's how we wake up. It's just very interesting that during the pandemic and all these tribulations, caused by us, our own thoughts and this ignorance, but at the same time, there is soil there, an opportunity to grow. Look at the people who are united all over the world because of, the injustice that's happening everywhere. And they say this is the perfect time for theosophies to push our ideas and promote.
Yes.
Because the land, the hearts are open. They're open. So there is plenty to put seeds right now all over the world, in whatever form we have. So this is another platform of doing it. But we also have to go outside too, to try to reach out to people. I don't know, go to a park. I don't know, do a kumbaya. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, well, congratulations again. This was really a beautiful gift for all of us.
Well, thank you. And happy Earth Day to all. And why don't we go ahead and close up, and then next... a chat. Oh, thank you. Something that, the next thing is... So it looks like Judy said thank you to Sonia, Shobha, and to yours truly. And then Shobha says thank you to Judy. And so thank you for those little chat messages. And then next Saturday, we will be hearing on the 25th, the Buddhas of Compassion. It'll be somebody from the Theosophical Society. From the TS? Australia. In Australia, TS in Australia. Yes. All right. So stay tuned for come back next Saturday, and blessings to you all, and have a happy spring and a wonderful Earth Day.
Thank you, Shobha and Ken. It was lovely.
Thank you all. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.